Well, welcome everyone to Freeing Yourself from Negative Thought Loops. My name is Charles Jones. I'm a self-development methodologist. I have published a business book on how my methods are being used to develop organizational leaders. And I've also published in the academic press a chapter on how to use these methods in coaching. Today's seminar, I'm going to share with you my understanding of emotions and my method for freeing yourself once and for all from negative thought loops. Before we begin, let's find out who's here. Please say your name and say a little bit about what brought you here today. Jackie, would you like to begin?
Actually, because I'm at work and I turn on my computer and it said live now, I always try to catch those live nows, and it's always perfect timing. So I can't tell you what brought me here other than some mystical thing.
Okay, great. How about you, Leanne?
Well, I've done a lot of work with my patients. I'm a nutritionist on changing negative thoughts to positive and getting out of that negative thinking. And it's very simple, very old methods that we use. It's nothing like what I've been learning here. But anyway, I am in the process of moving, and it's a huge step for me. I've never owned a home before. And I'm getting a lot of negative stuff inside of my head about it. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and can't even sleep. And then I try to meditate myself out of it. So that's why I thought this was very good timing for me.
Great. I think you're in the right place. How about you, Carol? What brought you here today?
Oh,
you are on mute.
sorry. I'm multitasking here. What brought me here today? So, well, first and foremost, I've never heard you speak, Charles. So I'm here to hold space and hear what you have to say and get to know you on that level. So I've been looking at your face and your pictures, and so I'm kind of excited to meet the person behind the picture, and just to learn something that I don't know, from you. Yeah, I try not to come in with any expectations. I just an open vessel to absorb and hear what you have to say and figure out how I can utilize your wisdom in my personal life.
Terrific. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Stephanie. What brought you here today?
Hi, good morning. The title actually brought me here, particularly. I'm glad I had today off to join. I was raised by a parent who had a lot of negative self-talk, and at 45 years now, kind of relating that to how I speak and how I use language and how I receive it and listen to it and observe it. This platform really interested me and intrigued me. And in fact, I invited my mother to this platform. So I'm just interested in seeing and learning and continuing to engage and learn about, in particular, negative thoughts and language.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Hannah, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beyond it's my job and I have to be here.
It's like the best part of my job, actually. I love your work. I've had the pleasure of learning from you already, and anything that you put out, I'm here for it. And I think that, this work, this information is so important for the way that we experience life. And, if we're here to have fun and enjoy our experience, then, understanding these things is is vital. And also to, to be in community with, with all of you. Deeply grateful for everybody showing up live, and, creating this space to really learn and grow together. So thank you to everybody, and Charles for, for creating this space for us to all gather today.
Well, thank you for the invitation to present, Hannah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right. So the agenda for today is pretty ambitious to cover in an hour. So the first is how your mind works. And I'm going to present a theory based on cutting edge research regarding the relationships between needs, emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. And this will serve as background for understanding why you fall into negative thought loops and how to free yourself once and for all from those negative thought loops. And these first two sections are kind of lecture followed by questions and answers. And as we go along, if you have questions and you want to put them into the chat so they don't get forgotten, that's fine. And we will have a formal time for questions and answers. And then this third section, how to free yourself from negative thought loops. I'm hoping that at least one or two of you will have a negative thought loop, and I will walk you through the method for how to free yourself from it in real time on this call. Okay, well, let's start with how your mind works. So the first thing to understand is that you have two minds. A conscious mind, which is aware of its own thoughts and thinking, and a subconscious mind that operates below the level of your conscious awareness. And the subconscious mind has three main jobs. The first is to fulfill your psychological needs. We all have a need to achieve the goals we set for ourselves, to protect the assets that we value, to anticipate and mitigate future risks, assert what we believe to be our rights, uphold our ethics, personify ideals, mourn losses, live a life worth living, and about 50 more of these fundamental psychological needs that all human beings have. And your subconscious is responsible for fulfilling all of these needs, and it does so below the level of your conscious awareness a great deal of the time. So, for example, if you drove to work today, it's likely that your subconscious kept you safe, anticipated risks, did all the driving while you listened to the news or the radio or daydreamed or whatever it is from your conscious mind. So it's important to understand that although we think we're doing lots of things during the day, 95% of our behavior, according to cognitive psychologists, is being driven by your subconscious mind. And all of it is directed at fulfilling these psychological needs. The second job of your subconscious mind is to constantly monitor whether you're on track to fulfill these needs. And if you're not, to generate a painful emotion. For example, then the other thing you do is it generates a pleasurable emotions when you are on track to fulfill a need. So for example, if you have set a goal for yourself, let's say you're driving along, your goal is to get your appointment on time, and suddenly traffic appears and your subconscious mind concludes, hey, given this traffic, I think we're going to be late to our appointment and not achieve our goal. It will generate a feeling of frustration to alert you, the conscious mind, that you're no longer on track. Think of negative emotions or painful emotions as a request from your subconscious. They are distress calls saying, hey, I'm trying to fulfill a need down here, and I'm not on track to do so. I think I'm going to need your help. And each of these needs has its own emotion that alerts you to the fact that you're not on track to fulfill it. So if you're not on track to protect a valued asset, you feel afraid. Mitigate a risk, anxious. Assert a right, angry. Uphold an ethic, guilty. Personify an ideal, ashamed. mourn a loss, you'll feel grief or sorrow. Live a life worth living, you'll feel depressed. So your painful emotions are their instrumentation, their feedback regarding your own performance, and they alert you to situations that require your conscious attention. And these emotions serve these two purposes. One is to alert your conscious mind that it needs your help, but the other one is each of these emotions also prepares your body for effective action, actions you might need to take. So for example, if you're not on track to protect a valued asset, the emotion of fear not only alerts your conscious mind of this fact, but it also prepares the body to fight or flee actions you may need in order to protect your life, that of your child, or some other valued asset that you have. The other thing that your subconscious mind does is it generates pleasure emotions when you are on track to fulfill a need. And for instance, if you're achieving your goals, you'll feel productive. If you're on track to protect your assets, you feel secure. You'll feel confident if you're mitigating the risks, empowered if you're asserting your rights, righteous if you're upholding your system of ethics, proud if you're personifying an ideal on what you think a good, who you should be, open to possibility if you have grieved and properly mourned your losses, and enthusiastic if you think you're on track to live a life worth living. So these are all being generated by your subconscious mind. And the value of sending that to the conscious mind is it allows the conscious mind to actually reinforce the things you're doing right that are leading to fulfillment in your life, just as painful emotions call on the conscious mind to make some adjustments so you can get back on track to fulfill your needs. So now the subconscious has a lot of work to do, and you'll notice here that it's a supercomputer, and it processes 11 million pieces of information per second. So it's a tremendously powerful supercomputer, and it's doing all this work kind of in the background. Your conscious mind, in comparison, can only process about 45 pieces of information per second. So your subconscious processes information 250,000 times faster than your conscious mind. So it's not going to interrupt your conscious mind very often, only when it could use its help in reinforcing thinking and behavior that's leading to fulfillment in the case of a pleasurable emotion, which is this gentle, hey, if you have time, do some gratitude, appreciation here, reflect on what you're doing well and do more of it. But it's kind of a high priority interrupt when you're not on track to fulfill a need, and the painful emotion, calls for the attention of the conscious mind. And the conscious mind really only has one job, which is to fulfill the emotional requests from your subconscious mind. And in the case of a painful emotion, by changing the programming that's not leading to fulfillment. And the programming that is in your subconscious that, say, gave rise to frustration is going to include what goal am I trying to achieve? And is it really that important that I achieve the goal? It's how am I going about the achievement of this goal? And do I need to update my strategy? And finally, my subconscious has the assessment I'm not on track to achieve this goal. How did it arrive at that assessment? And upon conscious examination, do I agree with it? So let's take this example of you're driving along, you hit traffic, your subconscious concludes you're not on track to achieve your goal of getting to your appointment on time. It sends frustration up to the conscious mind. Your conscious mind is like, okay, what goal am I trying to achieve? I was just listening to a book on tape or something. Oh yeah, I want to get to my appointment on time. What's my strategy for getting there? Well, this is the route I always take. I wonder if there's an alternate route I could take. Maybe I could adjust my route and get there on time. So you fire up your GPS and your GPS tells you, no, you're on the fastest route to your destination. But good news here, even despite the traffic, you're going to arrive on time. And so you're like, wow, maybe I shouldn't be using whether I hit traffic or not as my criteria for whether I'm on track. Maybe I should be using the prediction of Google Maps as to whether I'm going to arrive on time. I'm going to arrive on time. And your subconscious stops generating frustration, and you feel like you've actually are achieving something by going there, and you go back to listening to your book on tape, right? So if you skillfully know how, if you understand what your emotions are telling you, painful emotions are telling you, and you skillfully make adjustments to your subconscious programming, you'll get back on track to fulfill your need, and your conscious mind can go back to daydreaming or whatever it is that you want to do with it. Okay. The value of pleasurable emotions is it's an opportunity to reinforce the programming that's working. And maybe in this case, you decided to leave your house 5 minutes early just in case something unexpected happened. And you start patting yourself on the back for having done that. And that's going to increase the probability that you repeat that behavior in the future. So when your conscious mind is doing its job, you embrace every emotion, especially the painful ones, as an opportunity to upgrade your subconscious programming. And when you do this regularly, this puts you into an upward spiral of increasing effectiveness and fulfillment, right? So that's how your two minds work together, how you can work in partnership with your subconscious mind to continuously improve your performance and the level of fulfillment you have in your life. So I'm going to pause here and open it up to questions and answers. So let's hear from folks. Hannah, any reactions to what's been shared so far?
Yeah, there's, and I understand that this is likely a totally different training, which I'm also excited for. But I'm curious about, when our subconscious, creates, excuse me, like creates a need, and our conscious mind has been trained to fulfill that need in a way that is, that can be seen as maladaptive or harmful to us, right? So when we're talking about coping mechanisms, we have a subconscious need that's not being met. It alerts our conscious, and then we consciously make a choice that's not in alignment with a healthy choice or what is actually best for us.
So I will talk a little bit about trauma. What you're talking about is a trauma path.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and I will speak a little bit to that. It won't be the main focus of what we do from here, but absolutely, I'll explain how this model explains what trauma is, why it's so much, why we all have it. It's much more prevalent. It doesn't require going to war, being raped, or any number of other things. It happens all the time, and we are a culture that's very trauma unaware or uninformed, right? That'd be a place where Gabor Mate and I, are very strongly aligned at the importance of, having trauma-informed therapy, workplaces, et cetera, have this understanding. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other reactions or questions? Is this yes, Leanne?
Yeah, I didn't realize how finely mapped out the subconscious mind is.
Well, I've been working on this for 40 years.
This kind of blows my mind, just to think of all these emotions that come up, and you can actually put them into place.
Totally.
I'm shocked right now, because I just thought, you get away from the emotion, or you bury it, or you cover it up, or you change the way you feel by just thinking something else. But every single emotion that you have, there's a reason for it.
Yes, in fact, I'd say most of the methods that are out there for dealing with negative thought loops and quote, negative emotions are actually, they actually reinforce trauma patterns,
Yeah.
actually make you ill. I do a lot of work in corporations around emotional intelligence, and some of the prevailing beliefs in emotional intelligence are, we'll get to this in a moment, but they're forged in a misunderstanding of what emotions are. And it's that misunderstanding of emotions that causes stress, predisposes us to trauma, leads to all sorts of negative behavioral health outcomes. So I'm really a proponent of understanding that your the problem is not your subconscious. The problem is your conscious mind not understanding what its role is and trying to have power over the subconscious. When the conscious mind and the subconscious work together in tandem, as nature selected, people become not only extremely effective, but they're in a constant ongoing process of self-development where life becomes more and more fulfilling. Okay, and if you're not in that upward spiral, you're doing something wrong, and I can show you the two things you might be doing wrong in this presentation. Carol, any feedback or thoughts?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, Stephanie?
For me, it's really tying that it's understanding the subconscious in correlation and in relationship to the conscious that I was unaware of in what I already currently understand. So that's very helpful and interesting, and I appreciate so far.
Great. All right, then let's move onward. Just give me a second here. All right, so as I mentioned, if your conscious mind is doing its job, you'll be in this upward spiral of ever increasing effectiveness and fulfillment. And if you're not in the upward spiral, there's one of two reasons that's likely to be. One is that you've lost connection to one or more of your psychological needs. So for example, if you lose connection to your need to protect your assets, certain assets of yours in certain situations, then that need, which normally would always be running in the background to be scanning your environment, looking for threats, looking at trying to identify situations in which you need to protect your assets, and then moving into action to protect them, sending out fear if it's not on track to protect that asset. If you've lost connection to a psychological need, then in essence, part of your essence is offline. Part of you is there, and you're not benefiting from what that from that need and the fulfillment of the need. And this is usually as a result of erecting strategies to avoid feeling the emotions that are associated with that need. So if you found yourself in a situation where your conscious mind is just flooded and overwhelmed with fear, right? It could be, what we think of as a traumatic situation, a situation that's likely to end up in trauma. You may decide, and I'm saying decide, but let's say your innate evolutionary intelligence, a part of you that wants to keep you functional, is just like, look, I don't know how to resolve the fear. It's overwhelming me. I can't attend to any of my other needs. So I am just going to put this strategy inside of myself in place so that I don't feel the fear. Okay. And so the win from that is you're now functional in that situation. The loss from that is that now that need to protect your assets is basically offline. It does what it can, but you're not getting the messages about when it's not on track to fulfill that need. So my wife works for maps.org, which is working on treatment-resistant PTSD, and one of their pilot patients, clients, came back from war having pushed his need for compassion offline, right? And so that actually kept him safe and able to function in the war zone, but it's terribly messing up his life now. So how do you bring that need back online? So another name for these emotion avoidance strategies is trauma. So I'm defining trauma not as what happened to you, but as the strategies you put in place inside yourself to allow your conscious mind to continue to function, because you don't want to be flooded with an emotion. And it's generally a painful emotion, right? You can be traumatized by being overwhelmed with pleasurable emotions, but that's kind of a corner case. And you heal trauma by dismantling the emotion avoidance strategies and reconnecting with the underlying needs. There's a lot I could say about this, but that's a topic for another webinar. So some common trauma patterns that you may recognize in yourself are suppressing an emotion. So let's say anger comes up and you just grit your teeth and don't allow yourself to really feel it. That's a trauma pattern. You are trying to suppress the emotion, and that will cause you to distance yourself from asserting your rights. And people that don't assert their rights, they become doormats that everyone takes advantage of and walks all over, right? So you don't want to disassociate from your need to assert your rights. Another one is you rationalize it away. A lot of people do this with anxiety. Well, this what if appears, this feeling of anxiety appears. Anxiety is a super helpful emotion, right? Because there's part of you that anticipates things that could happen in the future where harm would come to you if they happen, right? And so, well, what if this happens? Well, that's not going to happen. Like, you rationalize it away, but it doesn't work very well, right? Or you end up having to use another trauma pattern strategy, like using alcohol or Xanax to subdue the feeling of anxiety, rather than, oh, this is a request from my subconscious to think about, okay, well, what if this did happen? Are there ways I could prevent this from happening and decrease the probability? What's my contingency plan if it does happen? How do I ensure that even if this happens, the harm to me is minimized in that situation? And as soon as you get back, as soon as you create that strategy and get on track to mitigate that risk, the feeling of anxiety will shift to a feeling of, I've got this, confidence, like I can handle this situation. It's not going to take me down. And another way to rationalize the emotion away is, oh, let me look on the bright side. Let me use positive self-talk. That's a trauma pattern, right? That is keeping you from functioning properly. Another one is dissociating from the emotion. We have a lot of this spiritual bypass stuff that people do. Well, let me go meditate. Let me mindfully observe the rise and fall of the emotion, right? Now, that's better than acting out. But if you just observe the rise and fall of the emotion without responding to it, you're not helping out your conscious mind. You're not being a good partner. You're not doing your job as the conscious mind, right? And then, super common one, numbing the emotion. Substance abuse, cutting, binging, drugs, alcohol. These are all ways to numb the emotion. And again, you're not doing anything to support your subconscious in getting back on track to fulfill your needs, right? So you don't want to do these things. There's a better way. Okay. All right. Second reason is that you might not be in an upward spiral. And these are related. If you have trauma, it's more likely this is going to happen. If you do this, it's more likely you're going to accumulate trauma. And the second reason is you misinterpreted one or more of your emotions through the circumstantial view of emotional causation. And I'll get into this in a bit. So basically, something happens that you don't like, and you assume that your painful emotion is as a direct result of that. For example, in the example I gave earlier, you might think in this view that the reason you're frustrated is because there's traffic. This traffic's so frustrating, right? And but that's not true. That is leaving out the whole part where the whole reason you're doing what you're doing is to fulfill a need, and the emotions are rising because your subconscious has the assessment you're not on track to fulfill the need. And so this sounds like things like, she's so frustrating to work with. He made me angry, right? He didn't make you angry, right? It's just that you're not on track to assert a right with him. I resent the way they're treating me. This is a very scary virus. I'm worried things are going to get worse. I feel guilty about what you did. Good news is emotions are never about what happened in the past or going to happen in the future. They always point to present needs. And if you feel guilty, it's because you're actually not upholding an ethic of yours in the present moment. If you're anxious, it's because you're not taking action now to mitigate a risk in the future. I'm ashamed of my weight. Okay. And I'll get into that when I do the flip side. So the alternative is what I call the effectiveness view. And by the way, I just want to acknowledge that most of us have been conditioned, or people role modeled for us, the circumstantial view of emotions through most of our life. Okay. We've done lots of studies, and for instance, we found in Fortune 500 companies that 70% of people will interpret their frustrations through the circumstantial view, 30% through the effectiveness view, and that 30% is predominantly people at the top of the organization who presumably are really good at achieving goals, right? But over 90% of everyone, despite where they were in the corporate hierarchy, was misinterpreting their anger through the circumstantial view. And that leads to anger management issues and becoming a doormat and stuff like that. Okay, so in the effectiveness view, if you look at the kind of corresponding things here, it's not that she's so frustrating to work with, it's that you're not on track to achieve a goal. It's not that he made you angry, it's because you're not on track to assert your rights with them. Resentment, you're not on track to consideration you deserve. Fear, you're not on track to protect an asset you value. Worry, you're not mitigating a risk. Guilty, you're not upholding an ethic. And shame, you're not on track to personify an ideal of what a good or worthy person is. And most of these ideals we've inherited from our culture, and many of them, upon conscious examination, you'll choose to drop as an ideal that you're trying to personify. But you can't drop it as an ideal you're trying to personify until you have identified that you have this bit of subconscious programming. And most of our subconscious programming we didn't choose, we inherited it from the environment that we have grown up in and lived in. So, okay. So the point here is this mistaken view of what causes our emotions, this circumstantial view, is the root cause of negative thought loops. If you think about it, if you really watch yourself closely, all of your thinking is in response to emotions that have arisen from your subconscious. So if you mistranslate what the emotion's trying to tell you, then all the thinking that takes place after the mistranslation is BS, right? It's misdirected. So on this previous slide here on the left, if this is how you translated the emotion that your subconscious has sent you, then you will enter into what psychologists call cognitive distortions and negative thought loops. So negative thought loops, the root cause of them is the circumstantial view of emotion. And psychologists have a name for these negative thought loops, and they call it brooding rumination. And they've determined that brooding rumination is the cause or contributing factor in depression, anxiety disorders, substance abuse, eating disorders, self-harm, and many other psychopathologies. 70% of behavioral health issues are caused by brooding rumination, which in turn is caused by misinterpreting your emotions through the circumstantial view. Okay. So I'm going to pause there and give you guys another chance to ask some questions. Just raise your hand, I'll call on you on the screen. Carol, you raised a flower. Does that mean you have a question?
I guess I subconsciously raised a flower, huh? I guess the thing that goes through my mind as I'm listening to you is like, in that knee-jerk reaction that you're having, it's like, this is a lot of stuff to try to break down, in your own head to get to a place of resolve if you're in a conflicted relationship or if you're having a conflict, on a daily basis with somebody, you know what I mean? So that's one thing that pops up.
Can I respond to that before you go to the next question?
Yes.
I'll give you time to ask the next question. So so I think we're born interpreting our emotions through the effectiveness view, and that it gets conditioned out of us, and we get taught to interpret our emotions through the circumstantial view. So for example, I was in a mall last week, and I saw a mother say to her 4-year-old, right? The mother's been dragging the 4-year-old through the mall, and the 4-year-old apparently wasn't having it, wasn't into it. And so the mom turns and looks very sternly at her 4-year-old daughter and says, "Bad girl, you made mommy angry." So mom has just taught her 4-year-old daughter that you're not responsible for your own emotions, right? You made mommy angry. That circumstances is what caused your emotions. Mom's not taking responsibility for the fact that she's angry. If she was, she'd ask herself, well, what right do I think I have with my child? Do I really have a right to expect that she's not going to get bored being dragged through the mall for hours, kind of thing. And then the second one is bad girl, right? She's now shamed her kid. She's now told her, okay, not behaving exactly the way I want you to is shameful. She's creating an ideal in the subconscious of this child, right? So she has really effed this kid up in a matter of 2 seconds, right? For their life. And most of us have been on the receiving end of things like this from our parents or the people around us. So the point is, the circumstantial view is a deeply embedded cognitive habit. You are not going to get rid of it overnight, okay? But I can show you a method by which you can take that kind of time out, reflect on what's going on, really get in touch, upgrade your effectiveness, and the next time you're in that situation, you'll be more likely to your instant response be the effectiveness view, but it may take some time. But I can tell you, my colleagues, our students, the people that teach for us, who have been on this journey for years, say 2 things. One, it's a long journey. It's kind of emotion by emotion, but it's so worth it. It so changes your life. So
I can see how that, yeah.
So anyway, I want to acknowledge, this is not one of these webinars where it's, hey, I got this great tip and I'm going to implement the tip and stuff. It's like, no, what I'm offering you here is a way to transform your relationship to your subconscious, your emotions in your subconscious, that will pay dividends for the rest of your life. And since you're a role model to other people, will influence them as well.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have a second question?
Well, suppressed emotions. And I was writing down, your list, suppressing emotions and rationalizing, blah, blah, the numbing of the emotions, which seems like it's something that everybody has done or does on some level or another. But it's like, I think that it occurs to me that when you've spent years and years and years numbing an emotion, whether it's the alcoholic or whether it's the drug addict or whatever, how, when somebody's trying to recover from whatever they're using or doing to suppress emotions, it's like, how do you get back to that root emotion if it wasn't something as traumatic as like you're talking about, like this person who went to war? You know what I mean? Like that's something that's blaringly obvious, right? But you have somebody else who's looks on the outside like they had a happy childhood, they're financially stable, everything is going really well, supposedly from the outside, but yet, they're sitting in a closet with a bottle of gin, whatever.
So my wife, who also teaches this work, like one of our favorite aphorisms is, fulfillment is the greatest healer. So what we will do with our clients often is we will design experiences in which we do two things. We get them in touch, maybe very tenuously, but we kind of get them in the neighborhood of the need that they have disassociated from. And then we provide them with an experience in which that need is deeply, deeply met. Okay. And then, and this is the important part, that's what we can do. But the part that they need to do is when the pleasurable emotion from having that need met arises. So we have a woman, let's call her T. Hi, T, if you end up watching this. She was really dissociated from her need to be cared for, to elicit the care that she needed. Tough childhood, neglectful parents. And so we created this experience in which she was overwhelmed with how touched she felt, how cared for and loved and touched she felt. And then her job is to savor, with her, consciously savor how good that feels. And all that savoring strengthens the neural connections between the conscious mind and the prefrontal cortex and the need/emotion centers in the brain. And so the more she savors that, the more connected she becomes to that need. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, because the more connected you are to the need, the more it hurts when you're not getting the care that you need. Okay, because the more intensely you're connected to the need, the stronger the pleasurable emotion and the stronger the painful emotion is going to be, right? It's part of our value system of how connected we are to various needs. So we did two things. So then the next thing we did with her is a lot of skill building in how to elicit the care that you need from others, how to get in touch with what you need, how to ask for it, really pragmatic. Here's the script to use. Oh, you're really resentful? Here's how to air a grievance and ask for some amends or compensation, things like that. So that's how we work with people.
Well, thank you for clearing that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's some intense work.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can
Any
I
other
ask
questions?
can I ask one quick question?
Let me see if anyone else has a question.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Leanne, anything? No? Dan, I know you're joining us late, so I'm not sure you you caught the content, but any questions on what you did? You're on mute.
Well, I'm not sure, exactly, and I thought it was 11 o'clock, I'm sorry. But I think it's, how long and how do you get people to commit to this path? Because even the path of what I teach is a long path, like any change. Changing those things in the mind and the neurology is not an overnight thing. So how do you get people to, continue to take those baby steps and commit to that?
It's easy. I think a trap that some people can get into in this space is, okay, I'm going to put my life on hold and heal all my trauma and then resume life, right? First of all, you're not going to heal all your trauma. The way I've defined trauma, everyone's going to die with unhealed trauma, with some level of disconnection to one or more of their needs. And these various emotion avoidance patterns in place. So where, if you structure it as coaching, then it's like, well, what's something that's really important to you? Okay, well, I'm engaged, but I'm really struggling with all this anxiety and fear I have for getting married. Okay, let's start there. So usually start with something which is really super important, fairly urgent for the person, and we just start our work there. And anything we do there, they'll be able, since the method is the same for every emotion, it just gets faster and faster and faster each emotion that you do. So someone that's in an abusive relationship, I'm going to start with anger and resentment, right? Someone who is getting docked at work for analysis paralysis, we're going to start with fear and anxiety. Someone who has an anger management issue, we're going to start with anger. And there's usually some goal that they have in their life, usually has to do with work or career or finances or health or partnership, relationship. So we'll just start with that. And the results are really fast. In fact, assuming we still have time for a demo, I can show you just how quickly you can use this to shift someone out of a negative thought loop. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Any other burning questions? Carol, are you good, or should we have sure
No,
question?
that was exactly the question that Diane asked, was my question as well. So thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So, so it's really simple to free yourself from brooding rumination or negative thought loops. And that's by reinterpreting the painful emotion that gave rise to that thought through the effectiveness view. And does anyone have an example that they would enjoy working with me on? Some place where you just find yourself going recurrently back and forth to a given situation, something you wish you had done differently, some perseverating about something that may or may not happen in the future, place you're beating yourself up, place where you just can't get out of, seeing some other human being as less than human for what they did or didn't do, anything like that.
I have all of them.
Okay.
I have all of them.
All right. You want to pick one?
But there is a good one that I would like to, something that may or may not happen in the future, because I'm going to be buying a home.
Okay.
And it's a huge undertaking. I've never owned a home before, and I've never lived completely alone in a house. So I have a lot of fear about that. And I'm going through in my mind, how am I going to, what if someone breaks in the middle of the night? Well, I have to go get a gun permit. And it's like, do I really want to have a gun? I can't own a dog. So it's all that kind of stuff working in my mind. I already know it's a very expensive house. It's like ridiculous for one person, but I have a lot of people around me all the time, so it's not that bad. So I have a lot of this negative stuff. Like if it doesn't work out financially, I sell the house. What's the worst that could happen? So it's that kind of stuff. It's mainly about this new situation I'm going to be in that I've never been in before. I have nothing to base it on for myself.
So what I'm hearing and what you're sharing is, okay, you have this event that's coming up in the future, you're buying a house, and you have a lot of what ifs, right?
Yeah.
So the good news is you're well connected to your need to anticipate and mitigate risks, right? And every time your subconscious identifies a risk that it thinks you should mitigate, you feel a little bolt of anxiety. And as you feel into the anxiety, you become aware of the what if. Okay, well, what if someone breaks into the house? What if I'm lonely? What if it financially doesn't work out, right? And so in my experience, people who are in a negative thought loop will be, their goal will just be to get out of their anxiety without answering the what if. And so, hey, it's just an anxiety provoking conversation. I don't hear that's what you're doing. What I hear you doing is actually naming the what ifs and answering them. Well, what if it doesn't work out financially? Well, I could always sell the house. The moment you put that contingency plan in place and your subconscious is like, okay, I'll buy that, it'll stop sending you anxiety about that particular thing. Well, how will I remain safe? What if someone comes into the house? You've already started to look at strategies for that. Do I get a dog? Do I get an alarm system? I'm living alone, da 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 da. So in my mind, what you're doing is actually interpreting most of these moments of anxiety related to buying the house through the effectiveness view. And when you do, you get to an answer about what you would do. So, the negative thought loop would be if you find yourself returning to the same what if over and over again, then one of two things are true. One is you're not taking the time to really answer the question to the satisfaction of your subconscious mind, or you've answered it and your subconscious says, I'm not buying it, right? Because it's not your conscious mind that you need to convince, particularly with fear and anxiety. It's your subconscious, and you should listen to your subconscious because it processes information 250,000 times faster than your conscious mind. So it's going to base that on its vast repository of life experience, not only yours, but the experience of your friends, the experience of people you've watched in movies and television shows and everything else. Right. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we got 3 minutes. Another one? Okay. Well, if not, very quickly, I'd love to go around the room and just ask each of you to fill in the blank. The most valuable thing I learned in today's webinar was, and try to be as succinct as possible. Let's start with you, Leanne.
Well, it's basically what I said before, that these emotions that do come up, at least they can be managed. Even if I'm not doing it right in that moment, they can be managed in a better way. Like, let's say I'm with family and we have a lot of, we're very loud and we're very reactive to each other and we shout and sometimes someone ends up leaving. But now I really want to get in touch with the subconscious, with what those needs are, and see where am I getting tripped up on a need not being met, or someone's threatening me with or something, and then I can put it into place better, even if it's not 100% right way.
Exactly.
At least it's for the moment.
So let me offer you a tip there, which is when there's a misconception that emotions drive reactive behavior. Okay, oh, grandma said something humiliating. Like, I feel humiliated and I'm going to lose it. I just need to take myself out of this situation. Right. And so fight, flight, freeze, fawn, also known as appease, fight, freeze, appease. All those reactions are responses. They occur in a part of the brain that does a threat assessment and response. And that part of the brain, so your subconscious will say, okay, here's the threat. It sends, say, humiliation up to your conscious mind. And if you, as the conscious mind, acknowledge the distress call, you acknowledge to yourself, wow, I feel really humiliated. Your subconscious will relax and give you behavioral control because it knows you're on the job. But if you don't, if you ignore that, if you pretend you don't feel humiliated, if you dismiss it as unimportant, if you, think you're angry rather than humiliated at the bottom of the stack, your subconscious is like, look, the conscious mind isn't doing its job, not on it. Hopefully it's working on something more important than my need, but I need to do something here. And boom, it responds with the reactive behavior.
Yeah.
So the trick to remaining composed in the presence of a strong emotion is name the emotion to tame the reactivity. Name it to tame it, right? And then, to your point, when you have a little bit of time to self-reflect, you can go into what was it about that situation that called on my feeling of humiliation. And humiliation has to do with kind of defending a certain kind of status that you have. And how do I, proactively work on that status? All right, thank you, Leanne.
Thank you.
Carol, how about you? What was the most valuable thing you learned?
Well, I think it's more of sitting back and asking myself, the question of what my personal psychological needs are, and I think in what I've learned is that, we have these needs that we neglect, so as I take notes, it's more about, look at what my own needs are. What are my psychological needs? What are my underlying needs? What is it that I'm suppressing emotionally? So it's more of me being inquisitive to leave this webinar and say, wow, okay, so let me make some lists here and make some notes. And it's just a self-discovery from a different perspective that I've never considered before.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
I think for me, it's interesting, but I think it's still, maybe I'm repeating myself, but it is really honing in on this understanding of the subconscious and really the role it's playing, the role it plays, the role it's playing. And in your list there that you had, I don't know if it's still up, probably not the slide you had prior. I feel like even right now I'm in this third column, but I didn't even correlate it with my subconscious related to the consciousness I have of a situation I have occurring now, where I feel like I've done list 1 and list 2, and I'm very aware of it, but I didn't correlate it with this conscious and subconscious relationship. So I think that relationship and how they work together is definitely something that I think is the more profound thing that I've learned today. Thank you.
Wonderful. And to that end, Hannah and I did a webinar called Healing the Rift Between Your Conscious and Subconscious Minds, and that's available in the Guidely community for you to do a replay of if you'd like.
Wonderful.
And it will cover some of the same content, but also some things that are different. Diana.
Okay. Well, first of all, you answered my question about the amount of time things take, because there's so much in this world. If like 6 steps to being a billionaire, and the whole insanity of that, which has never been true. But I think it's, people are always saying, even if, and I have a lot of fear about stuff. It's just been in my body since I was born. And naming it, which I do, but also allowing it to leave, which is very hard to do because it doesn't feel very good. But that you reinforce the idea that yes, we have to acknowledge it and let it be and not try to suppress it. So is that something I would have gotten from you?
Yeah, I would just encourage you to go one step further. So,
Okay.
the fears in your body, I'm afraid. And you might play with, is it just fear? Is it also anxious? Is it terrified? There's actually quite a few needs that are all kind of related. But if you just stay with the fear and then go to the next step, which is, what asset does my subconscious believe I'm not on track to protect? And naming that asset will bring another even deeper level of composure. Okay, the fear will still be there, but
Can you talk about asset? I missed that part.
Sure, assets would be your physical body. It might be someone you love. It might be a deeply cherished belief. It may be a dream you have about your future, but something that you value, that's an asset, something you use to fulfill your needs, is threatened. And your subconscious feels it's its job to protect that. And fear is, hey, I don't think we're on track to protect this asset. So once you surface that assessment and you can name the asset and realize your subconscious thinks you're not on track to protect the asset, you can ask yourself these 3 questions. Okay, so one is, do I really need to protect this asset? Right? Pretty much there's a time in everyone's life where you no longer need to protect a given asset. Like you're at your deathbed, you know what? I'm not going to protect the continuation of my body anymore. I'm going to drop my need to do that. And with that, the fear goes away, right? Often it's, I have this belief about myself and this person's saying something which is contrary to it. That's just ego. I don't need to hold that I'm that way. I can drop it. So you can often just drop your need to protect the asset. Second question is, what tells me that I'm not on track to protect this asset? Sometimes the way you're evaluating it isn't right, and you have to adjust your assessment about whether or not you're on track. Oh, actually, I am on track to protect this asset. Okay, great. I'm not afraid anymore. Third one is, you can adjust your strategy. Maybe you need a different approach to protecting the asset. And you can kind of like hold your idea for what that would be in your subconscious. I'm sorry, in your conscious mind. Your subconscious is always watching your conscious mind. You're not always watching your subconscious, but it's always watching you. So if you just hold that idea in your mind, okay, well, what if I bought a gun, had an alarm system, and had a dog? Would I feel I was on track to support, to protect my physical well-being? Yeah, actually, I feel pretty good about that. Let me book some time at the shooting range so I know how to use my gun, and it's more likely to hurt them than me, kind of thing. So this is how you kind of work with yourself. And if you do it with each of the individual instances of fear, over time, you'll just have a lot less fear. There are methodologies out there, there are modalities out there that can accelerate this process. And I think the most exciting one is, psychedelic assisted therapies. And, you have to wait till that's legal. And there's truly, well-trained people, but it could be as early as next year for one that's particularly good around fear.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. Nicholas, would you like to say hi? And I'm wondering if you have been here long enough to have an insight or two that you've gathered from this.
Yeah, I jumped in right when you were talking about the having a conscious view of things, which really stuck with me because how you were able to explain that is something I haven't found the words for, and that's something I've attempted to do in my life. Of, all right, this external thing happened, it's making me feel this way. Well, it's an internal feeling, so let's take a look at that. Maybe it's not the external thing. Obviously, within reason. If I'm getting mugged and I feel fearful, I'll be like, well, why do I feel like, no, get away from the mugger kind of thing. But it's like looking at your chart you have up now, I feel frustrated. Why am I feeling frustrated? Is it because of this person or that thing? No, like, am I achieving my goals? Maybe that person, that thing is impeding that. So, but I know the real reason is I need to be or I need to achieve my goals to feel that productivity. So just hearing how you've explained it just gave a lot of insight to that. A lot of words I had been missing.
Thank you. Thank you. And Hannah, would you like to weigh in? Curious to see what you picked up this time versus the healing.
Just that I want more people to be exposed to this information. I will say there is a quote, fulfillment is the greatest healer, that I think explains, it says so much that, that was covered in this particular session, because we are traumatized if we're not, in one way or another, if we're not on track to fulfill a goal, a need, a desire. So that in itself, fulfillment is the greatest healer is just, it says a lot. And I will carry that with me, when I'm having a painful emotion, it's like, okay, what am I having trouble fulfilling right now? And being able to look at it through that lens. So thank you. That's my takeaway.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'd like to end on one of my favorite quotes. And you could think of this as really the quote contrasts what life lived through the circumstantial view of emotion is versus what life feels like when you're living it through the effectiveness view. And here's the quote. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being thoroughly worn out before you are thrown on the scrap heap, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. And that's by George Bernard Shaw. Okay, well, thank you all. And over to you, Hannah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So if anybody wants to travel a little bit deeper into this work, I highly recommend a one-on-one with Charles. I put the link in the chat. If you're catching us on the replay, the link will be in the article just above this video. So I encourage all of you to pop into the community, explain to the rest of the community what you got from this session. That's what it's there for. It's there to share your insights, your aha moments, and really just connect with folks who are on this journey with you. So Charles, thank you again so much for your time, your expertise, and just the brilliant way that you guide us through, these rather challenging topics. You make it seem pretty simple. And I appreciate you for that. So thank you, Carol, Leanne, Stephanie, Nick, Diana, for being here live. And I'll see you guys in the community. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
You.